and then at the end, that'd be great. But yeah, but thank you so much, Linda, and thanks everybody for coming today. I want to kind of get right to it and make sure we get y'all a lot of value for this time that you're spending. And so if I was going to have you walk away right now, if we had to log off right now, the one thing that I want you to walk away with is those 3 words there underneath my title: strategy, story, tactics. Right now, there's a lot of focus on the other way around, right? A lot of people are thinking about the tactics first. What time should I post? What hashtag should I use? The problem is that we get very granular with that without thinking about what is our overall strategy and how do we tell our story. So I say that just to kind of set up, kind of the big takeaways of that. And what we're looking for today. I want to help you think about strategy. So my background, I'm a former newspaper editor, a school public relations professional. I've got my own business, Durazio Communications, providing communications and marketing consulting and freelance work. And as Linda talked about, I'm also a counselor with the Small Business Development Center. So I thought it was important to let you know that I'm coming from a little bit of not necessarily all from a new media approach. As I was a newspaper editor and when I was in public relations, those roles were right as a lot of different types of communications were coming into play. And so trying to figure out how to tell a story across different media in different times and a lot of different challenges with that and how we would create those different value points for our audiences. So I think before we think about where we're going, we've got to think about where we've been. And so I like to start off thinking about this fellow right here, Ward Cleaver, right? So if you were, a few decades ago, if you had a product and you wanted to reach this fellow, there was really just a few ways that you would do it. He's got his newspaper there. There was also an evening newspaper. He's got television, radio. You can take billboards. There are different ways that you're going to reach out to him, but it's very different than it is now, right? So at this point, it was very limited number of channels. They were very much controlled. You could also work with an agency who would be the gatekeeper between you and him, but it would be expensive. But you knew that those different channels had audience, that there was going to be some exposure there. It was also done for you. So you would just walk in and say, hey, I'm down at the widget factory. We want to sell our widgets. Can you guys make us an ad? It was relatively simple. Even though it was expensive, there was an audience that you were getting at. It was done for you. And so it was really relatively simple and you were staying focused on your business. And so I want to contrast that dad with a dad who definitely shows the split and where things have gone now. And that is Cranberry Juice Dad, right? So this guy last year went absolutely viral with his TikTok. He should be the target for marketing messages, right? I mean, the guy needs a car, or at least we might want to promote a skateboard to him. He likes juice, so competing cranberry juice manufacturers or other juice companies should be trying to market their message to him. But instead, with the success of one piece of content that put out, we see how decentralized that our attention is, that there's such a proliferation of all these platforms of where folks are, that now it's become a totally different proposition. It's flipped everything. It's on its head. So this is do it yourself when we start thinking about promoting on social media, when we start thinking about all these different ways that we might put some things out. We like to tell ourselves that this is totally free, but that's not entirely true. And we like to say that it's really easy. It's as easy as this fella just sipping on some cranberry juice while he's on his way to work on a skateboard. And it's just not so. So one of the first things that I feel like we have to start with as we're getting here is we've got to start with strategy, because these are not free. You're either going to spend time, or you're going to spend money, or you're going to spend both. For example, if you're trying to have success on Instagram, you're going to need some high quality images. So if you don't have those images, you're either going to need to pay a photographer, or you're going to spend some time trying to figure out how to get better. And that might involve tutorials or getting help from someone else or whatnot. But either way, you're going to be spending that time or money. Unlike when you were trying to reach Ward Cleaver, you just needed to go down to the newspaper and tell them you wanted to take an ad, and they handled everything from there. So the reason that it's important to start with strategy for me is there really isn't going to be some kind of magic bullet. Your successful strategy is going to be.
I will beat your ass.
Hey, welcome. Uh, your strategy is going to be customized for you. There's not a magic bullet. There's not a one size fits all. And so you're going to have to figure out the best way to produce a differentiated message for your audience with your unique sales proposition. The risk here is if you start dabbling in one platform and then you decide it's not really working, maybe even before you've really given it a fair shake, then you go to another one and you go down another rabbit hole. You're spending a lot of time coming outside of your business, and you're burning that time in a way that's not necessarily moving you forward. So we want to start off with strategies so that we know where we're going and that we can build on that and grow as we're going forward. So another few principles I want to lay out before we get into the next chunk of it here is story. So story is your brand in action over time. You've got to know your story. You've got to understand the things that are compelling about your business, and sometimes that's really hard to do. Sometimes it's hard to know what's going to resonate with your audience, and sometimes it's even hard for you, particularly if you're a very small business, a micro business. Sometimes it's really hard to even understand the really special things that you offer. But you've got to work towards understanding that so that you can be telling story in whether it's social media or on your website and all your different interactions. You want to be putting out the story of your business, not just 10% off, but what are the things that make you special? That's really an important piece of consumption and consumer habits these days. So when I talk through this presentation about engagement, I'm thinking about authentic interaction and not just some vanity metrics about how many people liked stuff and how much sharing was happening. Those are definitely important. Absolutely agree that those are important. But what we really want to do is use these platforms, these spaces, as a place where we're interacting with prospects, potential customers, potential collaborative partners, and that's where we really want to see this start to pay off. You're not in business to have a social media presence that is cool. You're in business to have customers, and so you want to use the social media as the tool to get you back to having those customers and having success in that way. One thing I always like to say is that I feel like that any business in any industry could find a way to have success on any platform, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to. Remember what I said about taking time and spending a lot of time and potentially money on getting yourself where you need to be on social. It makes more sense to try to play the odds. So if you know that your customers are generally senior citizens, then yes, there could be some reason that getting onto TikTok could be successful for you, but let's just play the odds and go where we know your customers are. Now, the next piece that I want to talk about, I think is important to just kind of understand from a basic standpoint so that we can leverage specifically for you, and that's the 5 key elements. And so advance this here. So here are the 5 key elements that we're going to think about in your marketing. We'll be going one by one through these. First is audience. When we think about audience, that is who is receiving your message. So you need to have some customer discovery and some market research to understand who they are. But we want to get even deeper than that. We want to think about what platforms they're on, what brands do they like, what is it that makes them your ideal customer. And so when we do that, we can start to when we try to think about them first, instead of thinking about your business first, then we can try to think about what are the things that I can post, what are the things that I can talk about that are going to resonate with them. I got to understand them first, though. And so that's why we got to start with thinking about who the audience is. Channel. When I talk about channel, I'm talking about the channel that we're communicating with them on, not necessarily channel 19, but whatever communication medium we are in. So that's going to be the social media platform that you're on or on your website. It can include things like the newspaper ad or earned media. But we want to think about where are the opportunities. We got to tie this back to our audience, right? What channel is this audience in? How can we reach them with our message, which we're going to talk about in a second, at the best value? We want to try to find something where that we can get that attention from them at a lower price point. And we want to, this is an opportunity to be opportunistic. We want to try to find where's the best fit for them. We also want to think about what is convenient and what is aligned with the kind of content that you've got. So when we think about message, so messaging is, what this particular piece is, I tell you what, actually, before we hit messaging, let me go back to channel for just a second. I want to give you all an example that I think is going to help with that, and also think about messaging. So I was working with a B2B provider, and there are probably only about 150 businesses in the state that she could reach out to, that she could potentially sell her product to. And she came to me with the frustration that her Facebook ads weren't deploying. And so, not knowing everything about her business at first, we were talking about some of the specifics of the Facebook ads, and then I kind of just had that light bulb moment, and I was like, wait a second, how are you trying to do these Facebook ads at these really probably no more than 200 or 300 decision makers out there? Have we thought about just making a more direct approach to them? Have you tried more networking opportunities and really more of a sales approach there? And so when we did that, we realized that even though we thought there was a social media problem or a digital marketing, digital advertising problem more so, we really realized that the problem was the channel that she was trying to use to reach them. And so, when we think about then moving into the messaging, what are we going to tell the audience? What are we going to connect with them about? Over time, you want to talk about a lot of different things. Maybe it's an offer. Maybe it's about how you support local. Maybe it's about an awesome staff member. And I always love posts when we're highlighting staff members and different people that are, or customers or what have you. But each story is its own piece. So, for example, a pub might focus on a post on how they're pouring local craft beer. So it talks about them being local. It's kind of showing the offerings that they've got, and talking about how they're curating great beverages. But they don't need to tell the entire story. They wouldn't say that. They wouldn't necessarily have that post about that local craft beer that they're brewing or that they're pouring, but then also, and hey, this is our great staff member Bob, and hey, this is also what our hours are going to be this weekend. So when we think about the message, it has to be the right fit for the channel that we're putting in there, right? If it's a post on social media, it's going to have to be shorter. It's going to have to be something that concisely and succinctly can kind of convey that message. This is also an opportunity to talk about, different collaborations. Sometimes we can kind of think about the content type as being part of the message as well. And really, this is the part where your story can shine. To take it to that next level, we have to think about the tactics. And here's where you're either really going to enjoy the game of it and thrive, or you're going to get frustrated really, really quickly, because tactics are very different on very different platforms. We tend to think of social media as a monolithic thing, that, hey, I'm going to post this on social media, but the tactics are going to be very different in different places. Like I said, on Instagram, we're going to need some good quality images. If you don't have that, Instagram doesn't even let you post without an image, without or some kind of visual. And so if you don't have that isn't going to be a great place for you to push out your content without that. So in thinking about this being platform specific, we've got to test and learn. These are changing a lot, the tactics of the individual platform. So we've got to test and learn. We've got to think about the audience. How are we going to get to them? How are we going to add value to that message so that we reach the right folks? And it needs to be really feeling native for that platform. The last piece that I think a lot of times folks think about, forget about, is you. You forget about how this relates to you. This has to be genuine. The platform, the channel, and the tactics that you're working on, the message, these have to be interesting to you and aligned with your skills. The example that I always like to give is Twitter. I personally do not like Twitter. I don't enjoy Twitter. It feels very scattershot, lots of little blip, 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 link, link, link. It's not really my thing. So if I create a plan, remember we talked at the beginning, we want to have a strategy, we want to have a plan here. And if my plan is that I'm going to engage all the time on Twitter, it's not going to be a good plan because it's not the right fit for me. Also too, if I've got some great visuals, I know I could leverage those harder on another platform and have even more success. So we've got to be authentic also to you, what is going to be convenient for you, and what really makes the most sense, so that we can get back around the circle, back up to your audience, and have an impactful connection with them. So a lot of times folks want to answer this question really without even thinking about it. Well, everybody's on social media, so I need to be on social media. And you know, that's where I need to put a lot of my energy, and I don't want to spend any money on things like advertising. I just want to pour everything into social media and make my pages awesome. And that's one great option, but I think it's important to to think about it as far as a full strategy, as a full plan that you've got. And so we want to make sure that we're careful in setting the expectations of how that's going to go. So I do think that social media is an important piece of the answer for businesses that are trying to be successful today, but we got to put it in the right context. So, you know, these cautions, again, it's not monolithic. There are different things that you need to do on different platforms. And many folks, you know, have a lot of frustration in doing something and having some success with it, and then things change. And that's a really tough thing, especially for a small business owner, and you're trying to do something else and you're having success with it. So you've got to kind of take that growth mindset from the beginning. Also, it can be really hard to grow organically on a lot of these platforms. So organically meaning without spending anything on the ads. It's really going to take some great content, and you really got to be dialing in those tactics. You got to keep on learning, and keep on growing, and working on it over time. And so that's where we circle back to this idea of being efficient. It's really going to be hard to do that on 6 different platforms. So we want to think about a strategy so that if you're going to have to be learning and growing and doing things like testing and whatnot, that you're doing it in one space rather than 6 spaces. So we always want to be thinking about how we can help you be efficient. And we do one of those things that's important towards that is thinking about the different levels of investment that you might have in a platform. The first, and the one that you should do as widely as possible, is to basically claim the page and decorate the windows. So you've got, let's say that you've decided that you're going to really focus on Instagram. Okay, well, let's still go ahead and get a page that is set up on Facebook and make sure that you've got all your contact information on there, fill out all relevant parts of the page, and then what I call decorate the windows, just put some posts in there so that there's clearly some content there. And then over time, sometimes put some posts into there, but you're not necessarily feeling like you're actively engaging there all the time, like you are more towards number 2. Then when we get to that number 2 level, then we're putting out regular content and you're really storytelling a decent bit. So this isn't necessarily an everyday level, but this is that you're in there, you know, at least once or twice a week, and there's some content that's going out, and people are, you know, if people are engaging with you, then if people post, you're going to be right on it and comment and respond to them and be engaging with them there. Which you still should probably do even at the number 1 level. You should set the notifications so you'd be seeing that. Definitely always want to be connecting. But in terms of time frame and time and energy and focus, number 2 is just a higher level. Number 3 is when you're really getting at it. So this is now, you know, potentially, you know, an everyday type of thing, or at least even more frequently. Maybe there's some more collaboration that's happening where either you have multiple people in your business, or other folks that are also involved with it as well, that you and other brands are working on sharing and tagging each other. And really, you know, this is really your core thing. And then that next level, paid, that's when you can theoretically, that's not necessarily part of that flow, I suppose. You could put that anywhere. But if you were going to tag on top of that with some paid behind it too, just to give it that extra juice, that's a great next level too. So when we think about that in those different ways, you know, we want to make sure, again, going back to strategy, like, okay, so how do we figure out which one to do which with? We need to think about, first of all, our audience. And I can't have the shorthand on your audience here though, but we also need to think about the platforms. So that's what we've got here that we can think about. So in thinking about these different platforms, on Facebook, obviously tons of volume. That shareable content is great. Groups, a lot of folks are doing some really nice work with groups right now. And so there's definitely some cool opportunities there. And so Facebook still remains a big old dog. Instagram has so many cool, unique features right now, are continually rolling out. It's a great discovery platform. It's definitely more visual, and there's a little bit more of a fun element to it as well. Pinterest, huge in terms of it as a search. The visual is huge there. There's a lot of inspiration that's happening at that level. And so depending on what you're business is, that can be a good place to be sowing seeds and connecting with folks. In particular, there you can think about kind of the idea of like the wedding board and the dream wedding idea, right? So if you're someone like a wedding florist, to have a great presence there, and have these pins, when someone is just beginning the thought process, can be really great. Um, Twitter, a lot of conversations, a lot of access. It kind of democratized, the access piece kind of broke down, especially in journalism. Um, LinkedIn is a fantastic one as well. The feed is a little bit interesting. It's still evolving, and how much time folks are spending there versus are they just jumping on for more of the networking piece of it. But there definitely feels like there's a lot of opportunity there right now, particularly because it has some good organic growth opportunities there. YouTube, it's hard sometimes to remember that these different platforms are also huge searches in themselves, and YouTube is one of the biggest. It's also fantastic as that video library tool, but as opposed to just uploading your videos there, you want to make sure that if you're going to have a presence there, go ahead and populate, go ahead and get your keywords and fill out the rest of the page, not just uploading a random video. TikTok obviously, has that explosive potential. We took a look at 420 dog face, the cranberry juice stat earlier. A lot of explosive potential because of the way that the organic growth is happening, but it is very much a younger demographic. So, very few businesses are going to be, optimal in terms of seeking that demographic. But if you are, then it is a great place to be. And I think in general, the short form video content is really what is clearly coming to the top right now as something that is extremely effective in not just on TikTok but also in Instagram, and then also with your website as well. So that's kind of like laying the foundation here. So at this point, I kind of want to take, we're going to kind of, this is the kind of watershed moment of this presentation. And so when we go into the back half of it, we're going to be looking at some specific tactical things that you can do, so that you can really be ready to maximize the time that you spend in working on your social media marketing. And so in order to do that, I want you to just take a few minutes and think about your business. I want you to think about what is your story. I want you to think about 3 to 5 topics or kind of pillars of the content that you might put out there. What are things that people are going to enjoy seeing from you regularly? Is it the people that are surrounding your business? Is it the values of your business? Is it tips and tricks for people? Is it, I got the example off to the right there, is it's a customer review? Is it that kind of testimonial? So I just want to give you about let's see, let's do about 3 or 4 minutes, and just kind of jot down or think through 3 to 5 topics that you feel like you can really have the base of what your storytelling is going to be on social media. All right, y'all. Does anyone have anything that they would like to share about their story?
I can give it a try.
Absolutely. What you got?
I'll just start my video.
Hey.
Okay. So the inspiration for us is that we are former NASA and DoD 4500 mission engineers. So we have focus on the executives succeeding. So how do we do that? We use our knowledge in fast, small teams to get you up and running in weeks versus years of giant big bang projects. So we see ourselves kind of as a Robin Hood, and we do a zero sunk cost to get the system up and running versus millions. We de-risk it versus those big bang projects, which have a 20% hit rate. And we're fully operational in weeks, and we upskill your people to take it over.
Now, that's amazing, right? That is awesome. Obviously, super smart guys, though. How do we make this into, super smart folks, I should say? How do we make this into something that bite size are going to be the individual posts? And you're like,
Yes.
that's why I came here.
Right.
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 But, I think certainly there, when we think about you just laid it out so well, right? You think about your inspiration, so how do we then, capture some of those pieces of the story? How do, certainly you guys are going to be talking about people, you guys are going to be talking about examples, brands that you, sort of admire, have an affinity for in, other brands that are potentially not related at all, that are, in other spaces that you can, just say, hey, we really are impressed with this. Those types of things can be great,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sent you an email for a one-on-one, so I'm
Sounds
looking forward
good.
to
Sounds
it. Thank
good.
you. Thanks for the comments.
Appreciate you sharing. Anybody else have any thoughts about their story?
Yeah, hi. I'm gonna be off camera. I got the the weekend look. So it's a health business and health consulting, and so I'm gonna my story will be like, hey, during the COVID time, we really need to be proactive to stay healthy,
Okay.
and so I see myself doing tips to stay healthy, maybe daily journaling and blogging about the experience of attempting to stay healthy, the challenges and the pain. And then, but also blogging the big picture, maybe weekly, just to say, hey, why are we doing this? How do we connect? And then at the last one is asking for video experiences so people can do some kind of, hey, this is what I'm doing, and just because that's so powerful. I
Yeah.
was
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think you said one piece there that really resonated with me. I think we all have a health journey that we're walking, right? And I think there's a lot of times where sometimes we walk off the path, right? We step off the path. Sometimes we jump way off the path. But the way that you expressed it right there felt like a little bit of grace. And I feel like that is something that's really going to connect with the human side of the folks that are in there. That's an important part of your story is, hey, it's okay that you made a mistake. Here's how we are going forward. Those types of different things. It sounds like you've laid out some really nice, some really nice ideas of the content and building around it though. That sounds great.
Thanks. And I just want to ask you, as far as like trying to bring in the big picture, I mean, I don't know if that's too like this, the philosophy of life. Maybe in this day and age, people don't have time to read and digest the, such a thing like, oh, health affects everything, and
Yes.
I
So
don't, is it
that's a
important?
great, that's a challenge that we see all the time. Even if even a hot dog stand, right? Not to minimize the business, but it's a pretty straightforward thing. They might post and try to tell their entire story in a post, right? And so it's kind of a little bit about titrating the level of story depending on where the channel is and what the situation is. Now, when I heard you talking about it at one point, it sounded like we're talking about, in some cases at least, blog, right? So that's going to be longer format. And so that might be a place where you work in more of the story top down, kind of like I said, I was former newspaper guy. So, we're going to have a headline and a lead and we're going to get 500 words or 30-inch story or whatever it might be. That might work in that space, whereas it wouldn't work for an individual post. And so you'd want that post to tell a sliver of that story and then build back up to it.
Thanks.
So yeah, I think that's great though. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks. And thank you for asking the question, because to be honest with you, that I just developed that with your question and
Good.
and the context of what you've been teaching us. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. No, this is great because it's hard to think about that, because when we're starting this journey off in business and when we're going along and we're thinking about the business. We're not necessarily thinking about the bigger picture and how we tell it. So I think we're gonna keep on moving. Those were two great shares. Thank you guys so much. So all right. So the reason we want to do that is because now we're getting a little bit specific. So now there we go. There we go. So we want to kind of integrate some of these different pieces into a strategy. And so we're going to think about, first of all, what is the key platform, kind of like your pillar, your key, your core platform that you're going to be working with. Then what others can kind of work together? How can we be efficient with the content, the actual pieces of the messaging, so that we can bring these things together in an integrated way, be efficient, tell the story effectively in different spaces on different platforms. We want to be driving traffic between social, ideally having some email opportunities, and then also your website. And we want to create a workflow so that content is being produced efficiently and then it's being used wisely. I'll give you a little example. So some of these things right now feel really abstract when I'm saying them. So I want to give you a particular example on this one. I had a real estate agent came to me. She was a new real estate agent, and she was making a career switch from education. And so as a teacher, she really was very much coming from a 5-paragraph essay kind of approach, and really wanted to, tell these really full, complete stories. And what was happening was she was spending basically hours writing essays so that she could post on social media, on Facebook, 3 times a week. And it was killing her, and she didn't understand why nobody was looking at it, and it was getting no interaction, of course. And we know, we all know in this conversation that that's not exactly the content that's going to be scroll stopping, right? But for her, it was like that's what she felt like she had to do. But in talking with her, she also had started to kind of play around with video on her phone. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And it was kind of, as we were just talking about a minute ago about tips and tricks. So she had some kind of tips. It was a real estate, like I said, real estate. So she was thinking about, some different key things for the unique area that she was selling real estate. So originally she had this website that didn't have a lot going on, but she knew she wanted to blog. And then she was putting these 5-paragraph essays into Facebook. And then she somewhere else had YouTube. And so she was putting her videos into YouTube. So what we did when we kind of, rethought about the whole structure of this was we said, all right, well, let's start with the idea of a tip or a trick that you want to give. And then you're going to bring in another brand, somebody who is, in her case, it was a construction firm. So you're going to connect with them and make a video. And so they made the video, relatively, low level editing, but it was a nice quality, professional, personally professional kind of video. Then she wrote a blog around that content. And then she took then the Facebook post was just, hey, are you XYZ? Take a look here at this blog post that I wrote, would be one version of it. Then when you went to the blog post, which was on her site, then you could click here to go to the video that was on YouTube. And then or I guess the video was embedded. I think she ended up embedding it. But that type of approach. And then likewise also being able to drive traffic directly from the social media to YouTube. And then if someone found it on YouTube first, then, hey, do you want to read the blog? Click here and link over there. So doing less work more efficiently was way better for her. She started to get some traction with it. And then it was like, okay, this is manageable for me. I can once a week plan to give this tip. It's going to have a blog and a video. And I don't know that once a week is necessarily the pace that she sat on, because I think what ended up happening was she was able to then see, okay, we need to tell little bits of this story. So in the same way, I tell you that story because I want you to think about in your business, what are a couple of key platforms? How would you use these things together in a way that makes sense? efficient production. This is so key. This is really important because we can, like with that one example, she can make the one blog and she can make the one video and she can post it, but can she keep doing it? Can she keep doing it weekly? Not unless you come up with a good plan for efficient production. So just like anything else in your business, we got to figure out the numbers, right? So we've got to decide on a level that we think that we can consistently do. So that shouldn't be, for most of you, that shouldn't be trying to start off with, I'm going to post every day. And it shouldn't be that I'm trying to post 5 times a week. I would say, aiming for somewhere between 1 and 3 times a week is probably going to be the right place as you're building up content. Then you want to structure that a little bit with a calendar. And so if you're, ideally you would be looking at your insights and your audience and seeing what the best days are to reach them. And that would include that time that I kind of had referenced earlier, but we want to do that based around your optimal audience. But let's just say that we're looking at it and you're going to post on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is the part that's really critical here. And this is the concept of batching production. So what tends to happen is we just run through that exercise right there. Okay, so here's what I want to post about. I'm going to post 3 times a week. I'm going to post Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you get up Monday and you're feeling good, and maybe even got a little start on the weekend on this post. And Monday, the time comes, you post it, feeling great. That's awesome. Maybe somebody posts, maybe somebody likes it, maybe somebody comments, maybe somebody shares. But either way, you did it and you feel great. Well, then Wednesday comes around, and Wednesday is a totally different story. Wednesday is just kicking your butt, and you just don't have the bandwidth to get it. It's okay. I'm going to post tomorrow, right? I'm going to post tomorrow. 48 hours later, it's Friday afternoon. You're trying to get out. You got something going on with your family this weekend. You didn't post on Wednesday. You haven't posted on Friday. And you're just wringing your hands and throwing your hands up, and there's just nothing you can do. You've either got to take away for this business thing that you're working on, or you've got to just not post. And what ends up happening is that push coming to shove, you're probably not posting, because when you posted on Monday, it wasn't like you set the world on fire and that you sold 1 million units and went viral. You weren't looking like cranberry juice guy out there. It was just a post and it was out there. You don't do it. So the problem then is not doing it. It doesn't happen, right? So if it's not coming out consistently, then it's so hard to fall into that trap. And that batch production is the answer to that. So when you think about it, if you're a cook, right, and you're making mashed potatoes, you don't wait for the order of mashed potatoes to come in and then start boiling the potato, peeling the potato, boiling the potato, mashing the potato. You make a batch of those potatoes at the beginning of the night, and hopefully they're going to hold out, and you scoop them out as you go. It's the same thing that you want to think about when we're thinking about your social media content. So the way that I like to think about it is starting off from at least a 2-week block window. I like to think about it in terms of a month. And so here are the posts that I'm going to work on for this month. So let's say you're going to do 3 a week. Then you need to think about 12 posts and schedule some time where that is your dedicated time. You're going to be just focusing on producing that social media content for the next month. Now, a lot of people, when I say something like that, well, what if something happens and I want to post? Okay, that's great. You can always add in extra stuff if something timely happens. But a lot of times the problem is the reverse, that you're waiting for something to happen that is social media worthy, that is postable. And what you're not doing is just telling your regular story. You're not just letting folks know, hey, this is what's happening with us. You're not, as in the example, thinking about, here's a tip for my audience. Here is our, one of our awesome staff members that helps out, that we're so proud of, or whatever it might be. So you want to be having that content that you're putting out there that is telling your story in those bits all the time. Again, of course, if something great comes up, you can post that as well. But ideally, what you're going to think about when you look at it on the month calendar is we say, okay, this is happening on, next Thursday, we've got our big sale or whatever. That starts the weekend of the big sale. So let's put some things out there that talk about the products that we're going to be thinking about. Let's put that out now, right? We can kind of plan out ahead of time. Another piece of the problem is that when you're trying to work in your business, and you're trying to do the things that need to be done, to stop and switch gears to make this post, maybe you grab a phone picture, and you're trying to, thumb something in there on the go, you're just not as efficient. And so if we can start off with the number of posts that we want to have based on a level of consistency, which is also good for the algorithm. It likes to see you kind of doing stuff on a relatively consistent basis. Then we can kind of plan what when this is going to go, how this is going to go, time it with the different things that you have going on in your business, and then produce it all in one sitting, you're going to find yourself to be much more efficient. In order to do that, it'd be really great to be able to see the calendar and lay it out. And so there are all these wonderful there are tools inside of your platforms. Facebook obviously has a great one, and other ones as well, and schedulers that can allow you to post in on different platforms. So this one here is an example from Loomly. I think you guys can see my arrow here. I mean, I could take this and pick this up and move it over there, or go into it, make some edits. As you can see, those different platform icons are on there because you can make changes so that it's edited specifically for each platform. And that's a really great advantage too, thinking about, that you have a different message sometimes to different folks on different platforms. So I'm going to give you just a couple of scheduler options here. That one that I had just pointed to was Loomly, but most of these have very similar type features. Hootsuite was kind of one of the first in the space. Buffer, Metricool is relatively newer, but there are tons of these. And really, if anything, it's worth taking the time to look at a few of them, think about the price points, think about some of them do have free level that you would have, especially if you were just looking at one brand. But these can be very helpful. So I'd highly recommend using this as a tool to with the strategy of batching your production so that you can kind of have a plan all together. The reason we want to have this all done is because if you're going to be doing stuff on the fly, you want it to be way smaller. You want it to be engaging, on your page. If somebody posts, you want to be responsive to them, but also on other pages. If you, when someone is seeing you engage with a brand, a potential customer, then and you're saying great things about the brand and being collaborative and supportive, then there's an overlap there where then they're getting exposure to you. On top of that, if you can time that engagement around when your posts are going, that seems to be a little bit helping to loosen some of the throttling of content with your own, even with your own followers. So we want to be able to have that content, the bulk of the content preset, pre-done, ready to go, scheduled ideally. And then through the month, when we're just doing something, quick, we can just engage sort of more like this. Now, when we think about all this together, this does sound hard. That's it's coming from the Mad Men era, and as we talked about at the beginning, it's not do it yourself, it's done for you. It's simple, it's expensive, but it's simple. So when we start to really think about all of these pieces that come into it, we do start to think about, well, gosh, maybe I should be trying to outsource some of it. How much does it cost? That depends. If you have a staff member who is able to add that to their responsibilities, or a couple staff members that can share it, having this concept of intentionality around it is going to make that efficient. If it's just you, or it's you and you don't really have staff that this would be appropriate for, to outsource it, probably, freelancers are going to be somewhere from a couple hundred to a few hundred to depending on how full of a package and how much content, that can be up to $1,000 or more a month, depending on what it is and what it is that we're doing. But you should be able to get a freelancer for a more modest level of content for more like a few $100s. Few really, but then there's agencies where you can be paying thousands of dollars a month, and they'll run all of these things in addition to a strong ad presence and all that. So it kind of just depends on what this spend makes sense for you. Is it worth it to do the outsourcing? If you don't like the idea of learning about tactics, and you're not really enjoying any of the platforms yourself, and it's a real hassle to you to even think about all this, then it's probably worth thinking about. Yeah, it probably would definitely be worth it. I think the best situation is a spot where you at least have someone supporting you, or if you have a business with employees that can get engaged, that then you're kind of getting the coaching and then able to use the employees to execute, if that happens to be your setup. The question I get a lot is something like, can I get my neighbor's cousin sister to help? And that can be great, absolutely. But I would highly recommend that you are staying active in there, that you make sure that you retain all the passwords. I've seen several times with businesses that I've consulted, and they had this amazing presence going, particularly on Instagram. That it was 6 months or 9 months ago, and then now I'm wondering, hey, what's going on? Well, we don't even have the password now. We had somebody who came in, and then there was a student, and they went back to school, or whatever. And no fault of the student necessarily, but the business owner hadn't necessarily stayed on top of it. And so we want to make sure that you're not just handing over the keys to the castle and then just not paying much attention to it, because you're trying to give someone like that in a collaborative space, you're trying to give them an opportunity to kind of grow. And so treat them like you would an intern, and make this something that's relatively structured, kind of not just somebody like, oh, when I need, you can post for me. It's, we want something a little bit more structured than that for you, so that you make sure that you're proofing the copy, making sure that things look good, but then also maintaining the control of it. So kind of putting this all together, if we're going to think about the steps to create your plan, it starts off with thinking about our audience, how we're going to get at them, and what we're going to tell them once we get there. In order to do that efficiently and effectively over time, day in and day out, you got to have a plan for this that's centered around your editorial calendar. That is a plan, scheduled concept of when you're going to put things out, how often, and the types of things. You're going to have to be learning about tactics over time. These are going to change. It's at any given moment, there's more to learn, and then they're also changing too. So just remember, there's an entire industry of people that are out there trying to stay on top of all these things to get the competitive advantage. So for you, being in a business that is unrelated to that and trying to use this from a marketing perspective, it's going to be hard to keep up with all of that, especially if you're trying to learn a lot of different things. So that's why I want this to be something that feels right for you and feels natural for you, so that you can kind of settle in and kind of actually enjoy that process. And you're going to get so much more efficiency through taking an approach where you're batching the production, you're scheduling it, and conceivably even outsourcing at least some of the work. Whether that's images, or whether that's a whole platform that's a primary platform, or blogging. We talked about a little bit blogging earlier. So that's another option too. So actually came in right on time for what I was aiming for. I know I moved a little bit quick through that, but definitely wanted to give us some time for some Q&A. So that is me. That is my email address. And you can also go to our website and then click on Let's Meet if you wanted to schedule an individual counseling session. I'm going to go ahead and come out of my screen share, and we are going to do some Q&A. Oh, I see we got some stuff in the chat.
I think a lot of that, Greg, was for the after you asked them to go out and think about 3 to 5 things. So I think you've addressed some of that.
Cool. I think Paula has a good one here that's probably great to circle back around on. Paula, it was very early, but you want to reframe that question and let's tackle it a little bit?
Sure, happy to. I bought a 10-year-old business a year ago, and it's a yoga, fitness, and wellness studio.
Very cool.
We have a great following. I would say that my main interest right now is reaching out to a broader audience. We know our brand is good. We know that we have a good reputation with those who come to us. We even through Corona, we've kept about 70-75% of our market. And that was because we were able to go online, in the studio, outdoors. We found ways to collaborate with the community so that we had 4 different ways to offer our classes. So, I'm not, you can probably tell from my voice, I'm not a digital native. I'm not an Instagram user. Some of our younger clients are interested in finding us on Instagram. I do think there is a place for us in Vienna to be in a younger environment, be along with a younger environment, especially children who are all zoomed out and stressed out. They need something to do to be up and moving. So reaching out to that lovely community is something I'm interested in doing this year.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think Facebook has become, you know, more of a grandma place. So I'm doing fine reaching my community on Facebook, but just kind of interested in how to jazz things up for a younger generation.
Yeah, I think, Instagram is great because that breadth of ages lower. I mean, really, when you really, it's kind of the 18 to 34, really, which is I think a lot of what your target could be. I think especially thinking about health is something that, college age students, from the college age students all the way to the top of the millennial bracket. Instagram is a great place to reach them on that. There's already a lot of content there. Is going to be the challenge is that there's a lot of conversations that are already happening, and so it's just a matter of continuing to get your story out there and add value for the folks that are there. It is tough to grow organically on Instagram, but it sounds like you've got a great community connection and some really great things to talk about. And so I feel like for you, some good consistent work with some really nice visuals, I think that should be a
Okay.
good opportunity to grow.
Visuals. Oh, yes, that's what I need to work on, the camera and the video.
Yes, yes. And don't forget things like design. Just using something like Canva can really, give you some really nice looking stuff, especially when you just have, for you, maybe a class that you want to let folks know about. Instead of using a stock photo of somebody in a yoga pose, going to Canva and using your brand colors and your brand logo and just setting up something kind of nice and popping out there is relatively, a low threshold to build because they've got a lot of templates that are already ready for you. So it's not starting from scratch in in some kind of Adobe Illustrator or something like that. So I would recommend that too to give you a good look on some things.
Thank you so much, Greg.
Absolutely. All right. Who's next? Oh, I think we've got a couple things in the chat. Did anybody else want to pop in and ask a question out loud first?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are there any critical elements to have in your story? Or is it just really what comes from you and your real authentic thing and you just let it go?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, that's a great question. So actually, I think that I could tell you we want to be resonating with our core audience, but if your genuine, authentic story doesn't resonate with your core audience, then something's already amiss. So I think that's it. I think it really is kind of coming from you. It's your genuine, passion. Why are you in business? What are the advantages that you offer? As they would say, the unique sales proposition, right? So what is the unique thing about you? Is it price? And because of that, there's these a whole group of folks that hadn't been able to see this kind of service before, but now they can. What is it that is the unique thing that you're bringing and the passion that you have? And when you let that lead, that's what people are going to be drawn to and gravitate towards. And when you see that with, when you have great visuals that tell that story, that's an even more powerful thing. But yeah, I think that's it. I think it's being true to who you are and what your business is, and making sure that you're thinking about the audience. Where are the places where y'all overlap that they're going to get excited about too?
Thank you very much. That helps.
Absolutely. All right, so catching up on the chat.
I had a question.
Oh, yes, ma'am, Tiffany.
And what if you have something like a daycare that you're trying to start where the audience could be any age?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, okay, daycare, what ages are you what ages is that going to be? Like school age or all preschool?
So from preschool, so from the babies up to school age, because it will also be aftercare.
Okay. Okay. And so
So
what,
parents, they don't stop at 30 anymore. So
it's
it
true.
could be
It's true. So I think then when I think about that for you, I think about that as this is a great example of trying to think through who that audience is, that very first step. Because if we can nail that right, we can figure out what the whole rest of that circle should look like. So if we think about that audience, we also want to think about where you're located, because a daycare decision is going to be a somewhat local, kind of choice. You're not going to drive, 90 minutes out of the way, of course, but you might also not want to drive 30 minutes out of the way to take your kid. So there's going to be some local piece to it. So then who are the folks in that neighborhood and nearby? And then we're also going to think about, price points. Is this, is there, an academy vibe to this? Is this a family kind of energy? And so when we start to think about those questions, we'll start to think about, those parents. Okay, they could be 18, 19, 20. They could be, like you said, they could be 35, 40, 45 even. But if we start thinking about where you are geographically, and what price point and what experience you're offering, that helps us to think through who that audience is. So I would say that probably the best for that range, though, still is going to be Instagram. Just straight purely on the raw numbers of the age demographic trends. And I think that's a good opportunity and a good place for you to be at least putting a good percentage of your time and thinking about social media.
And yeah, that's good, because I was actually thinking about Instagram, because as somebody said, Facebook is phasing out. I mean, it seems like grandmas are on there and stuff.
Yeah. At some point, the kids might come back around and pick it up and make it cool again, because they like to do that sometimes. But I think at this point, like I kind of said at the beginning, that part about playing the odds. So for you, most of your folks are probably going to be, well, depending on the age of the kid, of course, right? Because that kid could be a 7-year-old, and so we would want to add from the mom birth age, because I would assume mom's probably going to be a primary decision maker, and thinking about mom plus 7, so I mean it could be that you're right, it can be definitely a range in there. But the other piece of it too you might want to think about is trying to get at the younger piece of that target that we just laid out. Might be more first time moms, and that might mean that they have other kids coming down the pike, right? That then you end up having a little bit longer stretch on business with that one family. So then your average customer acquisition is kind of a little bit more smooth. And that might also make you think too, like, well, gosh, should piece of our content strategy be to talk about great tips for first time parents? Does that attract them a little bit more, and give you some extra juice there? So yeah, so that's a great question. I think that's kind of what I would come out with on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I see that we are at 1:00. I am perfectly open to take some more questions, but if you guys have to jump off, that's fine too. Did anybody else have anything out loud? I'm going to check the chat too, but of course trying to scan and read is tricky.
Greg, one person did say that they couldn't get to the microphone, but this is an interesting question. I'm wondering what the best way to handle it is if you are too successful in marketing and can't handle the bandwidth.
Oh, that's a fantastic question, isn't it? Yeah, that's a good thing.
Lucky you.
So I mean, I think if you're in that spot, what are some other ways then that the business can grow? I mean, that's what we're looking for right now. There's so many people who would basically do anything to change positions with you, that would trade spots with you. I mean, that's what the goal is. So what ends up happening in that case, I think, if I'm getting the underlying part of it, is then you're spending too much time being active in social media. That, I mean, you could always kind of tap the gas a little bit. Are you posting every day? Could you back off to 3 or 4 times a day, so that it's not as much, or 3 or 4 times a week, so it's not quite as much time that you're spending. If you genuinely just, this is more work than you want, and there isn't a plan to grow the business, if you're comfortable with the level it is and you don't want to either hire people or outsource pieces of the work, gosh, I guess mean, I guess you could just kind of back off of it even more. But I think the goal is to get to that point, and then to theoretically grow the business. Maybe it becomes something where more I guess if you got that kind of traffic, I mean, then maybe you start looking at who else can you refer them to, and can you set up an arrangement where then there's a referral fee that you're receiving from what has been a competitor potentially in the past that now is more of a collaborator. That might be probably the easiest way to just monetize the success that you've had is basically a finder's fee type. A referral type fee for pushing somebody their way. Yeah, so that's probably what I would what initially comes to me in that situation. But gosh, that's a great problem to have.
Here's another one, Greg.
Yep.
We're starting a new business that is custom-made wood furniture, so any suggestions would be helpful.
Wow. So the thing that is totally going to it's the actual product there. You actually have the product that you're going to be able to show. There are a lot of amateur woodworkers out there. You could do some small tips and tricks kind of things. I think you could have a lot of value out of that. Definitely talking about tools and gear. Everybody's kind of a little bit of a gearhead in whatever their thing is, and so if you can kind of talk about some of the products that are out that you guys really enjoy and that are key parts of your business. Of course, all this in a way that's not cutting your ability. I mean, I think we know that if you're making these custom pieces, they have a value that it's not just because you're pushing a button. It's because the artistry and the craftsmanship around it is what's producing that value. So another kind of thing could be a small dollar item that you can promote online, promote in your social media, sell online, and kind of get some more brand awareness out there. I kind of like to think about that as it's almost like you're paying people to buy your marketing piece. If you do it right, it kind of feels like that. Then they become aware of you and they think, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Now I want to get a larger piece from them, sometime. Maybe it's something that sits on their dresser, and then 5 years down the road, they're like, wow, you know what? I really want to get a great piece from them. So those are kind of just some initial things that come to mind for you. But I think that's a great, that's definitely something great where you should have lots of story to be able to tell about, the pieces, about the wood, about the tools, about the overall experience. I think that's great. Best of luck to you.
Okay, you mentioned it might be a challenge to stand out on Instagram organically. Is it helpful to pay for things, and what should you pay for?
It's a great question. That's definitely, I am not a digital advertising expert. But the bottom line is that at some point you're paying to increase your exposure. As we talk about this, the algorithm and all that, remember your posts are only going out to a small percentage of the people that follow you, not just out there for everybody, but just of the people that have already taken the affirmative step of following you. And so as a result, we need to get good quality content that the platform wants to push out further. Because remember, if I'm Facebook, if I'm Instagram, what I really want is people to keep on doing this. I want them to keep doing that all day long. And if I'm them, I do that by putting good content in front of them. And so they want to keep on scrolling. So we're trying to create, that good content. The answer to that, they've created this throttle so that they have a way to say, please pay me, right? So now it's pay me and you can get around this. I would say that one of the most important things in any ad spend that you're going to do in social media, though, is making sure that you understand who you're targeting. So not in an abstract or the kind of the ways that we've talked about targeting for the past hour. It's kind of like, kind of in this age range and sort of in this. I mean, we want to get really specific. Like, how specific can we be when we're thinking about putting an actual dollar number on showing that post, that ad, either, to that person. So we want to make sure that we're targeting the right person, and that going back to the original from the 5 elements, that the message, the thing that we're putting in front of them, is really high quality. If you're taking a cell phone picture from 20 yards away with bad lighting, that's not the piece that you're going to use for your ad on Instagram. Like, this needs to be a really nice looking, compelling thing with a really strong call to action. We're in ad space now, so it's not just a post. This needs to be really an ad mindset. So we've got to think really hard about who we're targeting, and try to use all the elements we can to get down to the really most ideal target for us. We want to make sure that we've got a really quality piece, there as well for that. Those are the key things I'd be thinking about.
Greg, what was the company you mentioned that has photographs? Is that the stock photographs that are free? I'm not sure if that's what they're talking about, or did you mention something else?
I don't, but I have a couple that are my favorites on that. I really like Unsplash, 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 and Pexels, Pexels. Sorry. Unsplash and Pexels.com. They both have some really great free stock images that you can use. The other one that had the layouts is Canva. I think that's actually probably what
Oh, okay, yeah.
now that I think about it. Canva is a really robust design platform that is just keeping adding so many great features. It's like an Adobe Illustrator, or another design program like that. You can move around text and all that. But the thing is, instead of starting with a blank sheet, you're starting with all these really wonderful templates that they've already laid out, with really great fonts and a modern look to it all. And so that's a really big tool that can be a big help for you. You also now on there can do short videos. You can do, they have all these different designs that are for the particular thing. So if you want to do an Instagram post versus if you want to do an 8.5 by 11 flyer, like, they have all of these things already, the dimensions are already keyed in, and all that. They're also working on more posting and scheduling through that platform. But Canva is definitely a tool that you just can't ignore, and it's got competitors as well. I've just been kind of into Canva for a while. My design skills are just enough, and so I can be dangerous with Canva, but I can do it relatively efficiently. So I really like it.
Is it always free, Greg? It's free, right?
No, it has a free level, but then I actually pay the, I don't know, $13 a month, so that I don't have to worry. I can get a lot more icons and graphics and things like that. A little bit more robust feature set, as they would say. So yeah. Awesome.
I think that was it for the questions.
All right. Anybody else have anything? All right, last call.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you, Greg, for the great information.
Thank you so much, y'all. You got my contact information, and we're at cvsbdc.org. That's again cvsbdc.org, and feel free to jump on there. And if you click the Let's Meet button, we can schedule individual one-on-one sessions with me. But also, we've got a whole bunch of other subject matter experts in things like finance and bookkeeping and strategy and startups and all that. So we've got a ton of different resources that are here for you, and really enjoy talking with everybody today. Thank you so much.
I just want to mention that we service Central Virginia. So if you're outside of our service area, we can help you find another SBDC that can also work with you. Or you can ask to work with Greg, I guess. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.